Winning in today's market takes the right moves. Welcome to Elevate Your Business from Elevate Coaching at Guild Mortgage. In this very personal episode, we talk about how the systems and structure you build can hold things steady during the toughest moments, so even when life changes you, your business remains strong for the families you're called to serve.
Today's conversation is an important one because a lot of people believe freedom in this industry comes from flexibility. But the truth is, freedom comes from structure. So today, my guest is Kim Arrington. She understands that at a deep level. Kim has spent 20 years in the mortgage industry and is currently at Guild Mortgage, producing consistently at a high level while staying deeply rooted in her service, her community lending, and her purpose. She's recognized as a top 1% producer, a Scotsman Award winner, and a leader who measures success not just by the numbers, but by the families she serves. So I am so thrilled to have you, Kim. Welcome to our podcast today.
Thank you, Paula. I'm glad to be here.
Let's get started. Like we always want to talk about, how did you get in the industry? And my understanding is you came in and you were kind of doing some data entry for another loan officer. How did you get into the industry?
It was really an organic, unintentional introduction to this business. Came in, I was helping a girlfriend who was already a loan officer. So I was doing just back in the day, 20 years ago, you were typing it in manually. You were doing paper applications. And I told you how it was really funny. One of the data points was MIP, and I'm like, what's that? I skipped over it. Is it really important? And she was like, girl, stop. You've got to enter that. That's mortgage insurance premium. So I didn't even know anything. It just was something fun to help a friend. Over time, though, I really enjoyed seeing how I was helping other people. And I left a career as a legal assistant and pursued being an originator full time, just through that experience.
What were you learning then that still shapes you today in what you do in your business?
Because it was back in the day, paper applications, it was really more about human contact and relating to that individual and connecting. We had the phones, not the cell phones. And I hold on to that today. I want to connect with people. I'm not the best to sending you over to online applications. I want to hear your story. I want to understand what it is you want out of home ownership. So that's what I hold on to today.
When you were, as you were going on in your career, what shifted where you said, yes, this industry, you could make a great living, but you actually shifted more to families served. Did anything happen to have you go down that path, to think about it more deeply about the families you were serving?
It was. The shift for me was my love back when the mortgage crisis occurred, my love of helping others. So for a stint, HUD REOs were really popular. And I am an educator. I love to teach. So I learned how to structure those loans. I worked with the attorney's office back then, Fernley and Price, and developed a CE class where I could teach agents how you navigate a HUD REO. That was affordable, $100 down. And in that experience, I learned teaching the public about different down payment programs and resources. So I'm afforded a couple of different platforms or different hats that I wear. And one is I'm very involved in the ministry. And for some that don't know, I am a licensed ordained minister. And I started with going to the Black Caucus here in Atlanta and talking to the chaplaincy about speaking from the pulpit. Black home ownership is so far spread in the gap of wealth building, and it's because we're uneducated. We focus on tithe, but we don't show how to move from renting to home ownership. I make the joke, it's not the joke, but I go to church and I'm always amazed and I look around how many Mercedes and Jaguars are sitting out there. And then I'm curious, how many of those financed or leased car owners are renters? And there's a big proportion that are. So from the pulpit, being able to talk about financial literacy, being able to spread that message within my community helped me also bring my community, the Black and Brown community, into better understanding of homeownership.
So you also talked to me about you got certified to teach Dave Ramsey courses on financial
Yes.
literacy.
Yes.
And so how did you bring that into your business?
Mm. So a lot of things when it's organic might come from a personal experience. So where I'm at today is not where I was 20, 30 years ago. I had that struggle as a single mom, putting it together, my first home, being a $90,000 home and understanding what budgeting meant. And so I went through Dave Ramsey just to be a better person, a better steward of my own resources so I could stand on my own. And through that, then I was able to host Dave Ramsey classes, even on my platform as an originator. I love the support of my region that has allowed me to open classes to the public and use our conference rooms for that. Then it expanded a lot of my agents that were aware that I would often refer their buyers to some type of financial literacy program, Dave Ramsey being one. I was then invited into a brokerage that I still support today to come and teach financial literacy to the agents. And that was a big honor for me to be trusted, to get that intimate with them. These are the agents, right? They're referring the buyers to home ownership and walking that journey out with them to better understand their finances.
So we talked a little bit about when we were prepping here about those exercises that you actually have to do when you're teaching those classes, which creates vulnerability, right? Because finances, I mean, that's sometimes hard to talk about. What do you think for you? What was one of the most challenging exercises? And what is like when you have to go teach, what's one of
Mhm.
the more challenging exercises you have to teach to real estate agents?
That's a good question. So, the more challenging exercise is when I bring them in the room and they have to bring their checkbooks because Dave Ramsey is built on our 7 steps and we're going through our baby steps, right, to building. But you first have to understand where you are, where you're starting from. So, when I have them bring their checkbooks and we look at who they're really serving, because isn't it true? Who you write the most checks or swipe the most is who your God is. And when I have them identify that and realize that's where their money went. It wasn't housing. And then when I have them bring the shoebox, because they had to collect for a week all their receipts to see where their priorities were. And to have my agents, and one in particular was really apprehensive about opening it up because she had like maybe $100. And it made her emotional and embarrassed because she really had to confront hypocrisy. I'm pushing others for home ownership. I'm on social media. I look fabulous, but I'm broke. I'm renting. And that vulnerability and my ability to share where I've started and how I had to restart and how you manage your savings. When we finished the coursework, hearing her come back to me, her in particular, to say for the first time she had $1,000 in the bank. Then a year later, she had $10,000 saved. And today, as I call her my friend, she bought her first home in 2025. Now that let me know that it stuck. It works. And she's going to be a better agent um, and have more transparency. And I think that's how you build your business, being transparent and authentic about who you are, what you are, and how we navigate this process.
You also talked about you were influenced by Coach Oliver, and particularly around discipline and focus. So, what did that force you to do and confront in your own business?
Coach Oliver, my mentor, I sought him out, had to sit him down and ask him, will you take me? Because he's not even in the lending business. But he was military, he was strict. I heard a lot about how producers saw their production go to a whole nother level. So sitting with him every week for 30 minutes, the discipline was don't bother getting on the Zoom camera if I didn't have the work done. The discipline was knowing he was going to fire me if I didn't complete all the exercises. And in the discipline, I confronted time, time management, and the structure of that, the ability to say no. And I'm such a people person, if you can't tell, and that can be a weakness. So he realized That's great. That's ministry, but you cannot save everyone. And you're going to have to do better at prioritizing, say, what I call where my prospects are, where my follow-ups are going to be at, and what I'm working on with more intentionality to execute. Deliver a better pre-approval. Stay more top of mind with the agent that I've executed that instead of kind of being all over the place. And I watched my business go from 24 million to, this past year was a historic year for me in my career. A personal worst time of the year, my personal life, the best career move, where I was at 44 million. And the amount of families served surpassed 150. Those numbers tell me, how did I do that? And it goes back to the basics. I had the basics in here of what I needed to do when I show up every day, because I have a responsibility to the client and to the referral partner. And I just kind of follow the same blueprint as far as my communication style, my delivery, whether it's that pre-approval letter, my delivery, whether it's that follow-up, and I've put them on this plan, and my suggestion to the agent that you follow up in 90 days, making them accountable, making them a partner, and then moving on to that next one. And I believe that has helped me to be able to keep going, because I'm following this system and the system doesn't change. How I show up, I determine whether that's going to work.
Well, he certainly held you accountable, right? Because he said, you don't even show up if you don't do your homework.
Yes,
And so time management sounds like that was a big mover for you.
it
What
was.
was, he brought that awareness. He helped you bring that awareness to yourself about time management. What was the most challenging thing for you to make some changes in that area? Because it's not easy to change.
Yeah. So I'm very involved in a lot of community activities in our industry. And that's something you want to encourage originators to do. But you can almost be spread too thin, right? So involved on a board, over here in Women's Council, not just being an affiliate. I'm going to be the treasurer. I'm over here. I'm a chairperson. I'm over here. I'm teaching a class for them. And remember, he taught me about the power of no, to save myself, but also to show up as a better producer. So I had to realign some of those relationships and my involvement. I don't have to be top tier, leading and chairing. I can be involved, measure my calendar. So my calendar, build it out on a month to month. I have now said I'm only doing 2 home buyer events a month. On my calendar, I've now pulled it in. I'm not going to necessarily do those face-to-face classes for all my agents. Instead, I've made them aware I have a home buyer Zoom. It's available Thursday at 7. I'd like you to have a minimum of 20 people on that call. I'm now maximizing my time, how it's spent, and making it more productive. And then that also does something for you as an originator. Not just showing that you're busy, but your time is valuable. And those agents are going to show up, make them revisit their pipeline with prospective buyers. It'll benefit you more in the long run than onesie twosies. So that's been a big key to help build the business. Still involved in the community very much, but I've reined it in so that I've still left me time personally with my family that I can enjoy.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's a lot of loan officers that get involved. And sometimes I call them when I'm coaching them, you're like the butterfly, right? You're flying around, going to all these community events, but what are you getting out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And focusing on your calendar and focusing on your time, it allows you to kind of set what that's going to look like for you instead of you always just saying yes and I'm going to be here and I'm going to be here. So I think that's great advice to loan officers that are out there wanting to still be involved with their community. You don't have to be
Because
the
you
top.
can see it on the front end and go, you know what? Like somebody asked me for an event for February, and I'm like, I am booked up for February. I don't have any more space for it. Like, there's my no. Let's book it for March. And book in your private time. Make that as important as that appointment that you would have with that brokerage to go for a meeting or a sales meeting. Make it that important, because what I saw in years past, I love the race. It's an adrenaline rush. I feel successful, but truth, at home that I'm sitting there and I'm feeling like I missed out all on this part of life. But that was my choice. I said yes to that and I said no to Kim. And balancing that better gives me more joy.
Love it. Great advice to everybody out there. So I know your faith is super important to you. As you said, you're a minister. How does that faith influence how you lead and serve?
So it influences me a great deal because being an originator, I think all of us, whether we want to admit it or not, it's part of your story. Sometimes you have scenarios with a buyer or an agent that's a slippery slope. And I'm a no. I'm like, hey, I don't think I'm your girl for that. And I step away because what I'm not going to do is live in compromise. At the same time, with my faith, I like to be so genuine with my buyers because I feel like I want to run into you in the grocery store and you feel good about me. I have experienced on a lot of occasions buyers calling me after closing that have had life situations happen that weren't so great. And customer service will call back, which I love about our platform because I could close someone 5 years ago and customer service can find me when they call in and let me know that they're in trouble and they said, Miss Kim said before I foreclose, I need to call. It's that post-closing work. I call it love. I don't want them to feel like I just loved on them up through closing, but letting them know I'm here and resources because life will happen to call me. That lets me know I'm doing really servant work, ministry in the marketplace, and it's full circle. And it creates even referrals through that because they know that I wasn't just here for the moment or here for the sale, and that's it. So living without compromise on all levels. I've turned down loans, walked away. I've said no to conversations. I won't participate in that. And God has never had me miss a beat. I'll always walk in abundance with it. And I can go to sleep with a clear conscience. And that's how you sustain yourself in this industry. No compromise.
No compromise. You also said, last year was your best year, but your most challenging year. And, when you hear that, that kind of is opposite. You know what I mean? How did you get through that challenging year while you were still having your best year?
Yeah. So, being on a good platform is awesome when they can execute and you then have a good platform with systems. My platform requires that we as originators follow these best practices. And I've grown up to learn they actually work if I work it. So going through my journey, and for me, it was my son being ill with cancer, and I was quiet. I was actually at a agent event when I got the call to leave for him. Following my system allowed me to be back and forth in 2 different states at the same time, no one even knew, and things were being executed seamlessly. LOA support, ops support, and through that journey and then for my son to pass when he shouldn't have, but he passed away and I shut down. We're human. All the faith, I was a prayer warrior, especially a prayer warrior with my child. But I got to that place where I had to say, I can't take another call. And while I walked that out with my faith, my team, my ops team, my family all carried that pipeline. The footprints were in the pipeline for each client because I was obedient to follow the best practices that I had been taught to do so people could step in and continue to execute. And when I was able to walk back in and be focused and clear-minded to serve people with the excellence that they deserved, I was able to step back into that and exceed goals I wasn't steadying on the goal. And I think that's the other piece. If you focus on that goal exclusively, I think you'll miss it. Then when stuff starts falling out as it naturally does, you become really upset and make poor decisions and or become greedy. I'm one of the loan officers that they say in this region, my manager too will say, you never know what you closed at the end of the month. And I don't focus on that. I look at what we have at the top of the month. Yes. And I want to believe God to capture it all, but I'm not focusing on that. What's on my board are people's names. I don't have the dollar amount. I couldn't tell you the loan amount. The family is what I see. And I think knowing that I was coming back to serve my families and serve them with excellence, it just kept building. And because I had such a strong platform and was implementing the best practices, my referral partners did not see a drop where people felt in the community, oh, she's out of pocket, better not call her, better call over here. And so I give a lot of kudos, appreciation, and gratitude for what I've learned on this platform, working with this team to become a better originator. It's kind of like it all came together in the mixing bowl. And at a time that was a devastating time for me, it served me well. And then I was able to serve others well.
I think, we get prepared for things when we don't know we're prepared, right? We don't believe we could be ready for such a devastation. But through your coaching with Coach Oliver, who helped you focus on time and discipline. And I think when you're talking about that system, and I believe you're talking about Salesforce, it's about the consistency, right, of doing your notes and your conversations. And that's the whole plan. Whether there's a devastation that happens in your life, whether it's a vacation that you want to take in your life that you've never been able to take, because everything's in your head, right? But when you're disciplined to get it in the system, anyone can walk in and take over and have good conversations. And I think that's exactly what happened during that time, which is why you did such great business. So I'm super sorry about your loss of your son. But I know through your faith, you were prepared as much as you could be, as much as anyone could be, right?
Right.
I want to just ask you a couple final rapid questions here. What's one mistake you think loan officers make repeatedly?
Overpromising. You're so anxious. Real quick, worked for a builder account, wanted to please him. It was my first one. I was so excited. Yes, we can get it done. Still working that rescore in the background. Showing up on the sales call. Yes, it's going to work out. The Band-Aid need to be pulled off. They're not cooperating as much. I don't have all of what I need in to do the rescore, but I don't want to disappoint you. Overpromise, underdeliver, and then what happens? You're not on the account. You've fallen. Your integrity. So you're hurt, but you got to look in the mirror and go, what could I have done differently? Because I'm still a good originator, right? But I was misguided in, it's okay if I say I'm bringing my true self to the table and being authentic. We are working with these clients. Be authentic about what that situation is. That builder wants to hear that.
I love it.
And fast forward, here we are years later. So excited. One was restored with that builder. That was one blessing years later. But all the other builder opportunities that I now serve on to hear feedback, wow, do you even serve anyone else? You're so attentive to the pipeline. You know so much about the families you're on it. Because one lesson I learned, I'm not going to overpromise. I'm going to show up and be accurate. I'm going to be intentional. I'm going to deliver exactly what it is concerning this particular file in this moment. And then I'm going to leave it to you, the client, to decide if you move it or terminate it, whatever that is. But I'm the professional. I've diagnosed the problem, and now I'm sharing that information with you. And I've had a much better run these past years with operating from that place. So I think that's a big mistake. That was one of
building trust. Like you really build trust when you tell the truth, right?
Yes.
So last question. What is one action listeners could take this week? What's one action should they take?
I want you to look at your calendar. Space it out. Where have you overcommitted? And where's your playtime? One action. Look at your calendar. Where have you overcommitted? And at a minimum, book a Zoom. And then reach out to all your realtor partners Ask them to review their 90-day prospects of who's been on the fence. Invite them to your Zoom. Drop nuggets in the chat box when you're on there. Give away a Starbucks gift card. Granny.com does it beautifully. $7. Have that as a winner. Create that little, they have that round wheel. You can drop all the names on that and make a game in there and make that power session 30 minutes. I promise you do that for 90 days. Watch how you then pick up referrals in new buyers that weren't anywhere on your radar and build that confidence in that agent that you've now given them a buyer that's there for production next month.
That's great advice. So, Kim, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story and your perspective openly. Your success doesn't come from doing more. It came from doing the right things consistently, correct? And for everyone listening, remember this. Structure doesn't limit you. It liberates you. So again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Kim. And until our next podcast, we'll see you then.
Take care. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Elevate Your Business, a podcast from Elevate, the internal coaching program at Guild Mortgage. Glad you could be here for today's playbook. If you want to check us out, head over to guildmortgage.com and click About Us to find Elevate Coaching. Have a question or want to keep the play going? Visit us and send a DM on Instagram at Elevate Mortgage Coaching, or leave a comment for us on YouTube. We're posting extra content, behind-the-scenes action, and everything you need to stay in the mortgage game. On Elevate Your Business, we share real stories and strategies from top producers to help you move forward. So ask yourself, what are you waiting for? It's time to elevate.
Guild Mortgage Company, NMLS identification number 3274, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, Equal Housing Opportunity, Equal Opportunity Employer, Arizona Banking License number 0018883. Licensed by the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Massachusetts Mortgage Lender and Broker License number MC3274. Licensed by the Mississippi Department of Banking and Consumer Finance. Licensed by the New Jersey Department of Banking and Insurance. Nevada Mortgage Company number 1141. Oregon Mortgage Lending number ML176. Rhode Island Licensed Lender and Third-Party Loan Servicer. Guild Mortgage Company, 5887 Copley Drive, San Diego, California, 92111. For licensing, visit guildmortgage.com/licensing. All loans subject to underwriter approval. Terms and conditions apply. Subject to change without notice. Elevate is an internal Guild Mortgage Company coaching program and not a separate entity. Podcast content is provided for informational purposes and based on publicly available materials or tactics used in the industry. The views, strategies, or opinions discussed do not necessarily represent those of Guild Mortgage Company or its affiliates. Intended for mortgage industry professionals only.
Paula Nirschl, NMLS number 383396. Kim Arrington, NMLS number 218594.
Thank you for joining us on Elevate Your Business, a podcast for mortgage professionals brought to you by Elevate, the internal coaching program at Guild Mortgage.